A very good day to you. Welcome to Idea TV Midday News. I am Chinatu Oji. Let's begin with the headlines. Gender and Inclusion Summit 2025 opens in Abuja and pushes for a gender-inclusive Africa. UN raises alarm over child recruitment. MTN and 15 other companies remit 54 billion naira in education and police taxes. African languages enter AI era. CAMBRICON share slide after August surge in profit-taking fears. Away from Africa, Asian markets diverge as Chinese tech stocks tumble. In health, UNIPORT professor urges nationwide stroke. In business, non-oil revenue surges by 40% to 20.6 trillion naira. Still, in business, CBN reforms boost naira stability, strengthens the yuan trade. In sport, Free State Stadium cleared to host South Africa versus Nigeria. Now the news in full. The Gender and Inclusion Summit 2025 has officially opened in Abuja, bringing together policymakers, civil society leaders, advocates, executives, and international partners to accelerate the drive for a gender-inclusive Africa. In a welcome remark, Ms. Udemu Fort, chairman of the Policy Innovation Center, described the summit as a platform for advancing gender-responsive governance.
For the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development,
the Minister of Women Affairs, on the other hand, and Social Development, Iman Suleiman Ibrahim, stressed that empowering women translates directly into national security, prosperity, insisting that sustainable change requires both policy reforms and empowerment programs. She praised the President for his strong demonstration of political will and for the inclusion of women and children.
For the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development, gatherings such as this, the Gender Inclusion Summit, are crucial in shaping the national development conversation and also driving the integration of gender perspectives into decision-making, while we amplify the voices that often go unheard. So we take it very seriously as part of our mandate to deliver inclusive growth and social transformation for the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The keynote address was delivered by Oledi Bawada, founder of the GAM Africa Institute for Leadership, who urged women to take ownership of the narratives, leverage digital tools, and embrace intergenerational dialogue. She called on women to take their power back by utilizing technology to amplify their voices and accelerate inclusion.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's physical and digital platforms allow us to share our stories and lessons learned so as to inspire, motivate, and lift others up, even unknowingly, to help each other get out of a victim mentality mode.
The summit also featured contributions from the Minister of Education, Dr. Tunja Lausa, who stated that the federal government is prioritizing inclusive access to quality education through a new curriculum with a focus on vocational and digital skills for both boys and girls. He emphasized that investing in women and girls remains the best investment for national growth, highlighting initiatives led by First Lady Oluwemi Tinubu under the Renewed Hope agenda. Dr. Lausa also outlined efforts in digital sovereignty, school mapping across states, the reintroduction of school feeding through a conditional cash transfer model, and enhanced school security in line with the Safe School Declaration. He added that strategies are being tailored to meet the needs of people living with disabilities to ensure no child is left behind.
Not new. It's just you just need the political will to get this thing done. We know we're doing a mapping. We know the countries that have the areas of the countries that have that do not have the infrastructure to support, and we're going to put plans in place to transport the students from those communities to where they can do their computer-based exams. We have clear plans on how we're going to do this. Thank you so much.
Plenary session featured insights from government and private sector leaders, with discussions ranging from the role of data in enhancing gender inclusion to mainstreaming women and persons with disabilities in various industries, with participation growing from just 700 physical attendees in 2022 to more than 2,000 in 2025 and thousands more joining virtually. The Gender and Inclusion Summit continues to build momentum as a driving force for equity and inclusivity in governance, business, and society. Moving on, United Nations has issued a stark warning about the growing humanitarian toll of terrorism across West Africa and the Sahel, revealing that 1,364 children were recruited by armed groups in 2024, while more than 14,000 schools were shut due to insecurity. Speaking at a regional counter-terrorism conference in Abuja, UN Special Representative Leonardo Simao described the situation as one of stolen futures and fractured communities, driven by extremist groups exploiting ungoverned spaces, advanced technologies, and local grievances. Simao emphasized that 5 of the 10 most terrorism-impacted countries globally are located in the region, with attacks increasing in both frequency and sophistication. He warned that violent groups expanding into border zones and even conservation areas, threatening not only human life but also biodiversity and ecotourism. Protected areas like the Wali Penjari complex spanning Benin, Burkina Faso, and Niger have become new hotspots for extremist activity. The UN envoy also highlighted how political instability, climate change, and rising defense spending are exacerbating the crisis, with countries in the Central Sahel projected to spend $3.2 billion on military budgets in 2025. Critical investment in health, education, and climate adaptation are being sidelined. Simao called for a holistic strategy that goes beyond military force, urging regional leaders to invest in political dialogue, social services, and economic activities or economic opportunities, particularly for youth and women. Still talking, in the first half of 2025, 16 companies listed on the Nigerian exchange, including MTN, Seplat, Lafarge Africa, ABUJA Cement, and Nestle in Nigeria, remitted a combined 54.97 billion naira in education tax and 81.33 million in Nigerian police trust fund levies, a significant increase from 32.52 billion naira and 15.13 million respectively in the same period of 2024. MTN led with 20.19 billion naira, followed by Seplat with 17.49 billion naira. Other major contributors included Lafarge Africa 6.77 billion naira and ABUJA Cement with 3.59 billion naira. Experts and civil society stakeholders raised concerns over poor accountability, weak oversight, and corruption in the utilization of these funds. They noted that despite large contributions, Nigerian universities remain underfunded, police remain under-equipped, and private sector efforts often supplement statutory levies through corporate social responsibility (CSR). Stakeholders called for greater transparency, independent monitoring, and proper allocation to ensure these statutory contributions meaningfully improve education and security in Nigeria. A major leap toward digital inclusion has been made as African researchers unveil what is believed to be the largest data set of indigenous African languages for artificial intelligence development. The African Next Voices project, funded by a $2.2 million Gates Foundation grant, recorded over 9,000 hours of speech in 18 African languages across Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa. Languages like Hausa, Yoruba, Kikuyu, isiZulu, and Ndwolo were featured, creating a critical foundation for voice-enabled AI tools that better reflect the continent's diverse linguistic landscape. Researchers say this initiative addresses a critical gap. Most AI systems today are trained predominantly on English and other European or Asian languages, excluding millions of African users from digital tools and services. Professor Vukosi Marivate, who led the research in South Africa, explained that we think, dream, and interpret the world through our language. Technology must also reflect that. His Kenyan counterpart linguist Lilian Wanzari emphasized the importance of capturing real, everyday speech to ensure the data reflects how people actually communicate. The impact as seen is already visible in South Africa. Farmer Kelegobile Musime uses AI grows, developers and researchers alike say the future of inclusion and innovation depends on making space for every voice. AI chip maker CAMBRICON Technologies saw its shares tumble nearly 12% on Thursday, marking the steepest intraday drop since January 2025. The decline happened today after a sharp August rally when the stock more than doubled and lifted its weight in the STAR 50 index to 15%, exceeding the 10% cap for a single stock. The surge stock fears of a forced rebalancing by index tracking funds when the benchmark resets on September 12. The sell-off in CAMBRICON triggered broader weakness in the semiconductor sector, dragging onshore chip shares down nearly 6% and pushing the tech-focused STAR 50 index more than 5% lower. Last week, CAMBRICON had issued a warning to investors citing risks from its rapid price increase since late July and urging caution against speculative buying. Despite the pullback, AI and technology stocks remain the key drivers of China's 2025 bull run, with AI shares up 47% and the STAR 50 index 26% higher year to date. However, investor sentiment was dampened further by reports that Beijing is weighing new measures to cool the overheated stock markets, which has rallied sharply in recent weeks, with the CSI 300 gaining 10% in the past months. Away from Africa, Asian stock markets closed mixed today as Chinese equities suffered another round of sell-offs, contrasting with gains seen across Tokyo, Seoul, Sydney, and Taipei. Shanghai's benchmark index dropped 1.3%, driven by 14% plunge in semiconductor giant CAMBRICON's shares, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng slipped 1.2% in late trading. Analysts say the strong August rally in Chinese tech stocks has stalled amid profit-taking and renewed investor caution. Meanwhile, Japan's Nikkei 225 rose 1.5%, lifted by positive cues from Wall Street after a softer U.S. labor market report raised hopes for interest rate cuts. However, sentiment in Tokyo was dented by a sharp 22% drop in NAIRA shares following the launch of a probe into accounting irregularities at its Chinese units. Despite political jitters surrounding Japan's leadership, a successful 30-year bond auction helped ease local market concerns. Globally, investor confidence improved after a U.S. judge ruled against forcing Google to sell its Chrome browser in a major antitrust case. Alphabet shares jumped 9%, while Apple rose nearly 4%. Oil prices continued to decline as expectations grew that OPEC Plus may increase output. At 7:15 GMT, Brent crude was down at 1.3% at 66.73 per dollar, while West Texas Intermediate slipped 1.4% to $63.10 per barrel. I beg your pardon. Let's now go on a short break. The news continues on the other side. Welcome back. If just joining us, this is still Idea TV Midday News. Now, the rest of the stories. Professor Chinwe Onwuchekwa, the first female professor of radiology in Rivers State, has called on the Nigerian government to establish stroke and trauma centers in every state. She made the appeal during her 21st inaugural lecture at the University of Port Harcourt, warning that the lack of specialized facilities is delaying treatment and costing lives. She urged that these centers be staffed by trained professionals and backed by federal and state budget allocations to subsidize care for the underprivileged. The renowned radiologist, whose lecture was titled Unraveling the Mystery of Gray Shadows, Pains of the Head and Low Back, also stated that road crashes and inadequate driver training were major contributors to head injuries. She also advocated for strategic rehabilitation centers to support stroke, trauma, and cancer survivors, saying early diagnosis and guided recovery can significantly improve patient outcomes. According to her, patients managed in specialized centers do well to recover faster with good outcomes. The Vice-Chancellor of UNIPORT, Professor George Will Owunari, praised Professor Nwuchekwa for a lecture that went beyond radiological science, highlighting the humanity behind medical images. He therefore urged policymakers in attendance to prioritize investment in radiology, describing it as an investment in life itself. Professor Nwuchekwa's call comes amid growing concerns over Nigeria's under-equipped healthcare infrastructure and its toll on critical care delivery. And now in business, the Nigerian presidency has announced a significant leap in the country's non-oil revenue, which rose by 40.5% to 20.59 trillion naira between January and August 2025, up from 14.6 trillion naira the same period last year. In a statement signed by the President's Special Advisor on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, this group represents Nigeria's strongest fiscal performance in recent history. The statement credits the rise of aggressive fiscal reforms, improved tax compliance, and digitization of revenue collection systems. Notably, non-oil sources now contribute 3/4 of Nigeria's total revenue, with 15.69 trillion naira coming from sectors outside the petroleum industry. Customs revenue alone reached 3.68 trillion naira in the first half of 2025, 390 billion naira above target, demonstrating that the government calls systemic change rather than temporary gains. President Tinubu, speaking recently at the State House, highlighted how this development is evidence of better managed public finances, noting that the federal government has stopped borrowing from local banks, thus reducing pressure on the domestic credit market. The ripple effect of these gains is already being felt at the sub-national level. In July, monthly allocations to Nigeria's 36 states and 774 local governments crossed 2 trillion naira for the first time, enabling the increased investment in infrastructure, agriculture, and social services. However, the President acknowledged that oil revenue remains weak due to low crude prices and underproduction, and that the current revenue growth, though encouraging, still falls short of Tinubu's broader target for funding critical sectors like education and healthcare. The final year-end fiscal performance is expected to be confirmed by the Budget Office. Still in business, Nigeria's recent foreign exchange reforms have been credited with stabilizing the naira and encouraging stronger trade links with China. The central bank's policies, which initially triggered volatility, have now restored confidence in the markets by unifying exchange windows and allowing the currency to find its true value. Analysts note that this stability has enabled China's traders to accept naira directly for yuan transactions, reducing reliance on the US dollar. These reforms have helped attract more foreign capital inflows, improve reserves, and stimulate non-oil exports. The stability of the naira-dollar rate has indirectly supported yuan-denominated deals, giving businesses more confidence in cross-border transactions. This comes as China remains Nigeria's biggest trading partner, and both nations benefit from a $2 billion currency swap agreement renewed in 2024. Beyond easing trade with China, the naira stability has spurred export competitiveness, with non-oil exports recording a nearly 20% growth year-on-year. Improved oil receipts, diaspora remittances, and capital inflows have all strengthened reserves. And now in sports. The Free State Stadium in Bloemfontein has officially been cleared by FIFA and CAF to host next week's critical World Cup qualifier between South Africa's Bafana and Nigeria Super Eagles. This follows early concerns over poor pitch conditions, which had cast doubt over the venue's readiness. However, after a fresh inspection, both football bodies confirmed the stadium now meets the required standards. The Group C encounter scheduled for September 9th is a must-win for the Super Eagles, who sit fourth in a group with just 7 points. In contrast, South Africa lead the pack with 13 points from 6 games. Nigeria must take all 6 points from the remaining qualifiers against South Africa and Rwanda to keep their slim World Cup hopes alive. In a related development, Lesotho will also host a World Cup qualifier at the Free State Stadium this Friday, September the 5th, due to the lack of a FIFA-approved stadium in their country. The high-stakes South Africa-Nigeria food showdown could prove decisive in the race for tickets to the 2026 FIFA World Cup in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. That's the most we can take on Idea TV Midday News, but before we go, here is a quick recap of the headlines. We brought you news that the Gender and Inclusion Summit 2025 was opened in Abuja, pushing for a gender-inclusive Africa. We also told you that UNIPORT has over 12 recruitments. We brought you news that MTN and 50 other companies remit 54 billion naira in education and police taxes. African languages enter AI era, and CAMBRICON applied after August surge and profit-taking fears. Away from Africa, you heard, the Asian markets diverge as Chinese tech stocks tumble. In health, UNIPORT professor urges nationwide stroke centers. In business, non-oil revenue surges by 40% to 20.6 trillion naira. Still in business, CBN reforms boost naira stability, strengthening the yuan trade. In sports, Free State Stadium cleared to host South Africa versus Nigeria. Do not forget to follow us across all our social media platforms at Idea TV. I am Chinatu Oji. Thank you for watching.